Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 744A, and today's date is August 18th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The U.S. Has Zero Grain Reserves as the Global Economy Deteriorates. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we see out in Greece, the creditors, the central bankers, they're doing what they do best. They want Greece to sell off bits and pieces of their country. This is part of their new bailout scheme, their austerity plan. And we're seeing the Greek government, they decided to sell about 14 regional airports to German company Fraport. The selling of the airports is part of a series of privatizations the Greek government has agreed to make as part of their bailout agreement. And we're going to see a lot more of this because basically this is what the central bankers do. They place a country into debt. They continually add on the debt. They make the government there impose austerity on the people. We see revenues decrease. We see jobs lost. We see people living out on the streets. Then they come in for the kill and they start buying up the country on pennies on the dollar. This is what we're seeing right now happen to Greece. Because they told us if we go back to 2008 when they received their first tranche of bailout, everything is fine, they're back on track. Really? Because fast forward to today, it seems like they're a lot worse off. It seems like all they have is debt. And there's nothing else to show. Except unemployment. Except economic collapse, except for people living on the streets. And we're seeing that there are still talks about bail-ins in Greece. And they're saying that bondholders might be used for the bail-ins. But this will then trickle down to depositors, who represent the vast bulk of unsecured Greek bank liabilities. So they're still looking at bail-ins because they see that these banks are completely insolvent. They see they're going to collapse. And Bloomberg is reporting that a recapitalization of Greek banks will exclude all depositors from losses until the EU Bank Recovery and Resolution Directive rules go into effect January 1st of 2016. So depositors will indeed be bailed in. Of course, it's only going to be those people who have 100,000 euros or more. And they're going to receive bank stock. Now, if the bank stock declines and the value continually decreases, guess what happens to their savings? It decreases. So what we're seeing right now is they are preparing and getting ready to do bail-ins if needed. This is what's happening right now. And it looks like everything is fine. They're coming up with this agreement and it's going to the EU Parliament. They're going to vote on it. Again, this is not set in stone just yet. There's still other votes that need to be taken, so everything is not done. They do not have the bailout right now. The IMF is looking to write off some of this debt. They realize if they go through with this, Greece just collapses right here and right now. And of course, then everyone's going to look at the bankers and say, you piled on debt and you let Greece collapse. They don't want this to happen. And this is why they want some of the debt written off. Because they want to keep them at that point where they can take their resources. That's their goal. Their goal is to get those resources. That's what's worth something. This dollar and ink stuff, that's worth nothing. Here in the United States, we are continually seeing layoffs nonstop. Walgreens, 370. There is a correction. Someone emailed me that Bass Pro, I was a little low in my layoff estimate here. It's up to 700. And they're saying about 50 or so were in the corporate offices. The others were around in other stores. There's also Stillwater Mining Company laying off 119 people. There's even retailers going out of business. American Apparel. They're saying their revenue, their sales have been declining rapidly. And it looks like they might go bankrupt. I mean, think about all the retailers that have closed up shop. And there's so many that are teetering on closing. We went through one bad holiday. Well, there's been a couple, but the last one was the worst. I mean, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, a complete disaster. There were retailers closing stores during the busiest time of the year. Think about that for a second. Aeropostale, we're going to be closing about 75 stores. They announced this during the busiest time of the year. Now, we're coming up to this holiday season once again, and we understand the unemployment is now down at 5.3%, which means there's a lot more people employed, a lot more people making money, because this is what the government is telling us. So what we should see is an expansion of retail, an expansion of people going out and using their discretionary funds to buy up those goods. Do you really think we're going to see this? Because guess what? Going back to 2009, when the government told us the unemployment rate was, 10, 11%? And it's come down ever since then. Why has everything gotten worse? Think about that. If more people right now, as the government is telling us, if you want to believe that, is employed, why are stores closing? Why is retail contracting? It makes no sense. The same goes with real estate. And we're seeing at this point the corporate media, the U.S. government, the Fed, they're doing whatever they possibly can to spin the story that real estate is recovering. It's in full recovery. Don't worry about it. Look the other way. And after 3 months of exploding building permits, driven exclusively by the Northeast region, and this was a result of the expiring property tax breaks in New York City, guess what? Since those expired and no one's getting the breaks anymore, July permits plunge 16.3%, the lowest since March of 2008. And when we look at this graph, we see a huge spike up and a huge spike straight down. This was also the biggest miss on record for permits. Housing starts rose less than expected, but thanks to a dramatic upward reversion, are stable at around 1.2 million units. And this is what they always do. They go back and they revise the numbers to make everything look better than they are. But this is actually pitiful compared to what has been happening back before 2008. I mean, if we're in this housing recovery, people should be out there purchasing homes left and right with unemployment so low. But we're not seeing this. We're not seeing this at all. I mean, actually, we're seeing mortgage applications. They've fallen flat in August. Now, this is the hot season for real estate. The flowers are blooming. People say, I want to move into a nicer house. The grass is green. Everyone's in a good mood. It's warm. I want to get into that house before September, before school starts. This is when people go out and purchase homes, spring and summer. We are not seeing this. Mortgage applications increased by 0.1%. August is a flop right now. And we're in the middle of August. When we go into fall, winter, it's going to completely come tumbling down. And we've seen this before. We saw it last year happen. But don't worry, the Fed is doing whatever they possibly can to keep this bubble alive, because you have to remember, it's a central bank economy, not a people's economy. And they will be giving that free money to hedge funds, investment companies. But again, what happens is they can only do so much. And we're starting to see things really fall apart. Now, the Atlanta Fed is continually making forecasts. They originally forecasted that the GDP numbers would be around 0.7. They upped it to 1.3 because what happened was the auto industry decided we're going to increase production. We're going to channel stuff. The dealers and auto inventories right now, which we discussed before, are at all-time highs. They're at record highs, and this is 61 straight months in a row. What they're trying to do is they're doing whatever they possibly can to get these GDP numbers up. And it doesn't matter how they do it. Because we know eventually what's going to happen is this whole system is going to come crumbling down. It's going to collapse. We're going to see the same thing that happened in Greece. There'll be a point when this system cannot take it anymore. The banks will be shut down. Bail-ins will happen. I mean, think about how this is going to occur. I mean, this could happen in any way possible. I mean, it could be a cyber attack. It could be anything. And basically what will happen is the FDIC will take over the bank. The bank's managers will be forced out. The bank's debts and liabilities are converted into equity or the bank's stocks. And yes, your deposits are considered a liability for the bank. Whatever happens to the bank stocks affects your wealth. If the stocks go down, guess what? You lose your money. If the bank stocks falls at the point because everyone has figured out the bank is in major trouble, your wealth falls too. Now everyone thinks, well, they're only going to take those accounts that have $250,000 or more. Everyone under that is going to be safe. But you have to remember one thing. The banks will be under capital controls. You will not be able to take out your money. If you sell a home during this period or anything else, or sell investments, guess what? You will not be able to get your money. It will be stuck in the banks. This is what people found out in Greece. We're going to see the same thing happen again. Now, a lot of people are asking, like, when is this collapse going to happen? Should I watch the stock market when I see that go down? Is that the collapse? No, that is the last indicator that the collapse occurred. Go back in time to 2007, 2008. When everyone was talking about how the real estate market is contained, the subprime securities were contained, how the Fed came out and was telling us that there's no forecast of any type of recession in the year 2008, and they were telling us about this in the year of 2008, the collapse was already happening. Countries around the world were falling apart. It's happening again. We're seeing the similar things occur. We're seeing massive amount of layoffs. Hey, wait, we saw this back in 2008. We're seeing real estate where traffic is drying up. House prices are coming down. Houses are on the market for longer and longer. We're seeing the same thing right now. We're seeing nations around the world, their markets are in a crisis scenario. Their stock markets are crashing. Coming out of the Economic Collapse blog, there are 23 nations where their stock markets have already crashed. Now, the U.S. right now is always the last to feel it. It happens everywhere else, and then it comes home. Of course, the U.S. was the cause of it. And we're seeing Europe, the emerging markets. Canada is feeling it now. And if we look, Brazil, Egypt, South Korea, China, Greece, Poland, Morocco, Nigeria, Thailand, and many others, everything is now falling apart. Investors here in the United States are basically leaving the stock market. The smart money is leaving. In fact, the $78.7 billion leaving domestic equity-focused funds has been worse in 2015 than it was even during the financial crisis years. Domestic equity funds surrendered $20.4 billion in July alone and have seen $158.6 billion in redemptions over the past 12 months. The global financial crisis, it's already begun. Moody's is out there right now saying that the global economy is on course for muted growth this year and next. What do they mean by that? Well, everyone thinks, well, okay, instead of, 3% GDP, they're going to lower it to 2.7%, and everything should be fine. If you notice, Moody's, Fitch, IMF, the government continually is lowering GDP. They all told us it was going to be 3.5%, 3%. It's going to be fantastic. Fitch has lowered it to 1.6%. What we're seeing right now is a complete slowdown, a complete collapse of the system. And of course, Moody's, S&P, they're not going to tell you what's really going on, just like with the subprime security market. They told you those were all AAA, and all of a sudden they collapsed. The same thing's happening right now. And what's very interesting about all this is that the U.S. right now has zero grain reserves since 2008. The drought in the American West is causing devastating consequences on U.S. agricultural products. Now, if some type of disaster hits, we're not going to have the stockpiles needed here in the United States. And this is why I've been hammering home everyone needs to be prepared. Everyone needs to be ready. Everyone needs to stock up on food, medicines. Make sure you have cash on hand, gold, silver, toiletries, a weapon to protect your family. Because when this hits, we're going to see runs on the supermarkets. We're going to see runs on supplies. Look what happened in Argentina, in Venezuela, in Brazil, in Greece. Because when the banks shut down, we don't have the supplies coming in. The government's not going to come out and say, okay, let me help you. Everyone is going to be on their own. And this is why at this point in time, because we're looking at what's been going on in the economy, you need to continually prepare. Actually, step it up. Because I don't really believe that this system will go past either this fall, depending on what happens, or next year. Now, of course, the central bankers want to do this in their own way, so they're not blamed for it, but anything could happen. We've seen this before. If you haven't started prepping, you can use companies like lifereliance.com. They have all the food ready to go. They have bug out bags. They have seeds, first aid, you name it. It's all put together. You can also go there and put your own together. And it can be delivered in one shot. If you're continually going out to the big warehouse type of places, continually get the canned goods, go out there and get what you need, and don't stop. We should be looking at these other countries and saying, okay, we understand they had bail-in documents, we have bail-in documents. They're in a lot of debt, we're in a lot of debt. Europe is crashing. The United States is next. We saw this back in 1929. We saw, prior to the stock market crash, that Europe was a complete disaster. The same thing's happening right now. And when the market comes down here, in the U.S., it's too late. The collapse is in full force. Now everyone wakes up. Now everyone sees what's going on. Now everyone rushes to the supermarket. Now everyone says, oh my God, I am not prepared for this. Why can't I get my money out of the bank? Why are the lights off? What is going on here? So everyone needs to be prepared. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.